I messed up. Oh, hold on. Mike.
All right. Hello, everyone. Sorry, got mad mixed up. Like I said, man, it's just me. I suffer so much. A lone warrior. It cracks me up how white dudes be obsessed with that lone warrior. You ever notice how white men, there's so many of these like revenge fantasy movies where someone kills some ex Green Beret or some CIA agent kills their whole family. Then the white man goes on a revenge murder orgy, killing all the people responsible for the death of his family, or the not just Taken is one of the more popular ones, but there's like so many of these movies of these white men who dead families allow them to fulfill their violent murder orgy fantasies. Y'all familiar with them movies? And the lone warrior and the justice system just won't do anything. They just fantasize. And then when you look at the reality of the situation, that if you're a white family, and that's going to be slaughtered, it's more likely the fathers are going to be the ones to kill the white family. White fathers are more likely to kill their entire family than some stranger or the cartel, or terrorist. The greater threat, your protectors are your greatest threat under this system, under patriarchy. But anyway, that's funny. Anyway, before I even get into the show, welcome to the BroDiallo broadcast. I was having difficulty because I go on and they tell me on this software that I use, because I got the cheapest version, that I'm out of storage space and I have to go free up storage space. So I had to go delete some archives and move some shit around because I don't have the resources. I think I should at the very least be able to upgrade my software, especially since I don't really have the backing that I used to, like at Q4. So if you can find it in your heart, in your spirit, I'm going to go ahead and pass around the digital virtual basket and ask that you dig deep. That you dig deep and you give from your heart and you give from your soul, and the means of which you can give are scrolling across the screen. There's a few things that I need and a couple of things that I want. And if you could help me with that, shout out to my current supporters and sustainers. But, if we could level up, that's it. Because it frustrates me a lot of the times, the stuff I have to do, the hoops I have to jump through. But I'm willing to do it. Y'all willing to listen? I'm willing to give my Pan-Africanist radical critique and insights. So now that asked, I wouldn't feel right if I didn't ask. I'm not speaking nothing into existence. No, I don't want the universe, because the universe, y'all, that's supernatural shit. No telling what they send you. Send me a succubus. Me and the universe don't speak the same language. I'm not asking the universe to send me. I'm asking human beings to send me material resources. Anyway, before I get into the topic of discussion, which I'm not going to delay because y'all don't like these rabbit holes, but there's something I have to share. Right now, there is a class action lawsuit against the Chicago juvenile justice system. And as someone who was on the verge of being put into foster care, and more than a few times almost ended up in juvenile justice, and having brothers that I grew up with, dear friends from the third grade and up, incarcerated in the juvenile justice system, and seeing how it is a very profitable pipeline. We all talk rhetoric about the prison, school to prison pipeline. And it's almost, if we don't even understand that, you ain't got to finish school to go to it's prison to prison pipeline, because a lot of young Africans are end up in juvenile justice system, wards of the state. So anyway, I'm sure this is universal across juvenile incarceration, because young offenders and young people in foster care and young offenders are some of the most vulnerable people in our society. So there is an investigation and a building class action lawsuit, which is weird because this is actually for former victims. It doesn't, but I would hope that the impetus is once the former victims make the case that there is a systemic problem, there will be policy change, enforcement, and more consequences coming. But anyway, all that to say that if you yourself, or if you have a family member or someone you know who had juvenile offenders, and some of the cases are as young as 8 going up to 17, 18 years old, where there has been a rash of sexual abuse. And just about all of the young people coming through the Illinois juvenile justice system, they're not celebrities, and they're not being attacked by celebrities. So their stories don't get told. And even when their stories go public, even when they articulate what they've been through, nobody pays attention. Oh, they were little criminals, they little thugs. And especially here in Chicago, if you turn on the corporate media here in Chicago, all you see is running stories of carjackings and organized retail theft, and just the young people run amok, blocking streets and burning the city down, which is a fucking lie. Even the retail associations are now having to come forward to say, well, no, shoplifting isn't, there isn't an explosion of shoplifting. We don't really have any solid evidence linking shoplifting, retail theft losses to store closures. 95% of shoplifting incidents are just individuals taking a piece of gum or trying to steal a shirt. A small percentage where over 95, whereas even though the vast majority of stories that talk about retail theft talk about this organized retail theft, hordes of young people rushing into these Target, rushing into Walmart, going into the Apple store and just cleaning them out with no consequences. No one can stop them. When 95% of retail theft is people sticking a little something in their pocket. And a lot of those retail thieves are middle class and wealthy white women, bored white middle class housewives. So now that researchers started really, and criminologists started really looking into it, that the corporate media is really pushing this whole thing of young people run amok, and young people are a grave threat, even though one of the highest forms of theft and one of the most profitable forms of theft that exist in this country is retail theft. Retail theft. Wage theft. Wage theft is rarely acknowledged, rarely prosecuted, and rarely compensated. We got all these people in jail for trying to grab up a package of meat, some toilet paper, or a candy bar. How many CEOs, how many managers and administrators are locked up for denying working people millions of dollars, billions of dollars, trillions of dollars of compensation? If your auntie goes to the store, goes to work, and then goes to the bank or gets her direct deposit, and then she goes and pull out some money, and I run up on her and steal her, I'm looking at 15 to 25 years, depending what jurisdiction. Some places give life for robbery. But if I open a company like Pinky, slutty capitalist, slutty class trader, slutty vegan. Now, if I open up something and rob my employees and don't compensate my employees for their work, that's stealing. An even more insidious form of stealing, because it's the type of stealing that some people don't even know. And then when she gets caught, she has to pay a fine. And 9 times out of 10, the fine does not even reflect the theft. It doesn't even meet the level of theft. So anyway, back to the juvenile offender. This justice system has harsher punishments for people who are lower on the socioeconomic, on the racial, on the cultural, political hierarchy. The lower you are, the more your behaviors are sanctioned and punished. And so the Illinois state, the entire state criminal justice system, has a rash of sexual abuse And there have been corrections officers and even wardens that have been discovered prostituting, attacking young people. The facilities are the Cook County Juvenile Temporary Detention Center. And many of these young people in these detention centers haven't even committed crimes. Not that if they committed crimes that would justify it. I'm just saying, just a lot of times with so much turmoil and upheaval, they don't have anywhere to put children. So they might end up in that or some minor infraction. But the St. Clair County Juvenile Detention Center, the Kane County Juvenile Detention Center, the DuPage County Juvenile Detention Center, Lake County, Will County, Winnebago, McLean County, Peoria, Champaign County, Sangamon, Mason County Juvenile Centers have all had staff and civilian staffs, warden, corrections officers, parole officers, counselors have preyed upon young incarcerated individuals, young men and young women, children, not men and women. And so they are, because they found so many cases, they're making a public call for anyone who knows anyone. If you know someone that spent any amount of time, even if they weren't convicted, even if they were detained, even if they were taken into protective custody, please, it's free. You get a free evaluation. You can go to Shield Justice Watch or just search Illinois juvenile justice case, and for the most part, they haven't defined any type of compensation. There's potential for compensation, but more importantly than that, this has to be exposed. This has to be exposed, and so please, and I mean, for all these motherfuckers out here talking about drag queen story hour. All these motherfuckers talking about, where's the drag queen? All these people out here talking about Pizzagate. All these people sharing all of this nonsense and all these conspiracies, baseless conspiracies about child trafficking. Every time there's some real concrete evidence of organized systemic child abuse, where are the Pizzagate motherfuckers? Where are the people that kicked in the door of that showed up with AK-47 at Drag Queen Story Hour? As far to my knowledge, there's been no incident of a child being abused at Drag Queen Story Hour. But I can list you some churches. If you need a list of addresses and churches where children have been abused right on the altar, some of them, I can give it to you. Where are these motherfuckers? Where are they? All the people going in schools and running up in school libraries, pulling out the books about the gay penguin couple that hatched an egg, and the people out here fighting. Where the fuck are they? Where are the people that kicked in Drag Queen Story out? Run up in the Illinois. I mean, I don't know how many Illinois detention centers, just every county. There's over a dozen facilities that have confirmed. This is the beginning of the investigation. There's been no penalties. This is just based on interviews, exit interviews, and interactions and material evidence. And the evidence is the bodies of the young teenagers. So, again, Illinois, mainly, especially Chicago, north, south, even the affluent suburbs. If you know anyone, just go to Shield Justice or Shield Justice Watch. Ask, and a lot of these young people, they come out of juvenile justice and their parents are disappointed or angry at them. The parents got to pull up to do a signature bond, or their child gets caught stealing or gets caught joyriding in a stolen car, and the parent shows up. How dare you? Nobody goes up to a child and be like, how did they treat you in there? What happened to you in there? And the children are ashamed. They're scared. They're already in trouble. They already been handcuffed, interrogated, strip searched. And then not to mention the abuse and trauma that they suffer from the other inmates, many of them gang affiliated. All I'm saying is, please, in Illinois, and I'm just speaking about Illinois where I dwell. I'm pretty sure if there's no case, there's instances. I worked at Rikers Island for years, and just the abuse that went on. Rose M. Singer Center. Rose M. Singer Center, which is the female, Rikers Island is all male facilities, and they have one female facility on that whole island. There's a series of male. So they have one juvenile facility and Rose M. Singer Center, which is the women's facility. And everything there is just like all the other prison areas, except everything was painted pink. The bars were painted pink, the stone, the mason work, everything's painted pink and fuchsia. It was the weirdest shit. Feminine. And the women would come in there. Many of the women will come in for minor offenses. And generally the policy was and I saw it happen with some inmates because I worked in the clinic. I worked in the prison infirmary. And the women had a separate infirmary. And nobody wanted to go work at the women's infirmary because actually it was just, you'd be sitting there on an 8-hour day if you got like half a dozen cases. So people are like, the day's really long in the women's facility because they didn't have the amount of injuries. Like there was a lot of conflict there, but there weren't the stabbings, the broken bones, the shattered eye sockets. And so many of the people was like, I just rather work in the JVC or the JHC building where the days are shorter. But anyway, the women would become incarcerated. They would have to get a pregnancy test, a tuberculosis screening, just basic workup for any communicable disease and respiratory, anything they could come into there with. A lot of the women were suffered and struggled with addiction and things of that nature. But many of the women would come in immediately if they were of age, if they were within a certain age range, be tested for pregnancy. And within 3 to 4 months of incarceration, many women would come up pregnant, and then they would just put them on home arrest. And there were no male inmates in the facility. So if she became pregnant, it was a male guard, warden, what do they call it? Staffer. They called us civilians. If you weren't a guard or part of the people with the billy clubs, they called us the counselors, the HIV counselors, the medical staff, the educational staff, the clergy. A lot of clergy in there participating in that. They would call you civilian staff. So I saw a lot of abuse there. And the women, fortunately, were sometimes there was less shame with women step up and say, this happened to me. So the women were more vocal about their abuse. But that didn't mean that the women would get recourse for their abuse. Women were more likely to speak up about being abused, but because there was less stigma associated with being abused, but that didn't mean that they got more of a response. Whereas a man locked up in Rikers and you speak up about being abused by staff or even inmates, you considered a punk, they're going to put you in PC and they will just pile onto your abuse. So me as a person who wasn't part of the inside, I wasn't on the blocks like that. I spent most of the time in the infirmary, but what I'd hear, a lot of the women would speak up, and but the juveniles, they rarely spoke up about abuse, and the men in the male facilities rarely spoke up about abuse. They just would take it, and in their mind they were like, well, I'm gonna get my own justice, I'm gonna do something. But by and large, they either walked down their time or they got sent upstate with no consequences for the predators. And my aunt told me, the worst people in the world target jobs that work for the youth, animals, and elder. And it's really tragic because some of the best people in the world, the well-intentioned people in the world, some of the people with the biggest hearts, most loving, empathetic, and nurturing people in the world, they orient themselves towards those industries, but also predatory people orient themselves towards that industry. And that's what's so tragic. But the best thing about it is oversight, investigation, exposure. So I guess that's that. But I'm not in all surprised. I'm outraged. I'm saddened, but I'm in no way surprised. The only thing is, why now? Why now? It's curious. But anyway, all that to say is, don't take it for granted, and also talk to your people, because a lot of times their kids, a lot of your relatives and friends and loved ones, they'll have a child getting in trouble and they don't want to talk about it or put their child's name out there, that their child got into some trouble, or their child, something relatively minor. My son got his driver's license at 18, and within 2 weeks he got into a fender bender. He was back, pulled out of a gas station, and another car was coming up the block. He felt his car was out too bad, and he just backed up and backed into the car that was behind him. And he was very embarrassed. He didn't want to tell us, but he knew he had to tell us because we find out. He didn't want to tell us. He definitely didn't want the family to know. So a lot of times when young people get in trouble, and parents, man, that's what they count on. Your son already got locked up for stealing, or your daughter had got found with some drugs or something. I don't want to say, went to juvie. I don't want to say nothing. That secrecy is what the predators rely on. That shame and that refusal to talk and share with trusted people is what the predators depend on. So go tell it on the motherfucking mountain. And y'all come tell me if you see anybody that talks this piece of gay shit, this groomers, they grooming our kids, that talk this drag queen story hour, that talk all this shit, this and conspiracy shit, Pizzagate, find if they tell about these confirmed through multiple agency investigation, confirmed systematic, institutional child predation and child abuse. Find one. It's never told. I just, earlier this year, I was talking about the Baptist Convention. The Baptist Convention. Almost 300 of their administrators and ministers in the Baptist Convention have been arrested and convicted or under trial for preying on children. Not a drag queen in the bunch. Not a transgender person among them. Anyway, let's move on. Oh, I should share the link. I have to find. Oh, you want to hear something? Let's cleanse the air. Let's recenter our chakras. It's just an interesting story. Y'all all know that image of Cameron. I guess I'll share it. Where they at, dude? How you work this here thing? There we go. I don't see it as an option. Oh, here we go. Y'all know this picture right here of Cameron? This picture of Cameron, right? Cameron was using this picture in his Dipset merch. Oh, wow. Anyway, Cameron was using this image in his picture of, this is his pink era. He had like a pink Hummer or something, or a pink Range Rover, and the pink flip phone. This is Cameron of the early 2000s. I didn't like this Cameron. I liked the Cameron before this Cameron. The Confessions of Fire Cameron. I like that album, Confessions. That's the last time. And when he went that whole Dipset, all I kind of faded. But this image of Cameron is some people. Why isn't it showing? What in the heck? Oh, I got a close-up of it. I'm sorry. Sorry. God damn it. There we go. This is a good one. Cameron. Oh, this is the story. Oh. So anyway, Cameron got sued because he put this image of himself on merch. He put it on t-shirts and shit. And so he was selling Dipset and Cameron merch. And he put this image of himself up on there, of himself in the pink fur and the pink fur hat. And he was walking around talking about gangsters and thugs can wear pink, as if we didn't know that. And so the woman who took this picture, a photographer by the name of Rosa Cochran, Dejamila And when I saw the Jamila, I thought it was a sister at least. The Jamila Rosa Cochran sued him and was like, if you want to use this image on your merch for Dipset, you got to pay me. I own this image. I took this picture. I own this image. Of course, Cameron, and being a Harlem cat, was like, what? Because if you've ever walked up 125th Street, ain't nothing but bootleg T-shirts up and down. I don't know how many of them T-shirts I didn't have. I didn't have 1,000,001 bootleg $5, man, back in the 90s. $5 T-shirts. Have my damn wardrobe with bootleg Afrocentric T-shirts from Harlem. I had Malcolm X shirt. I had African fetishes dancing across my chest. Harlem, NYC. I used to come home from when I would visit New York. I used to go home to Kansas City and make it rain $5 New York T-shirts. And then you get the old school I love New York. So he a Harlem cat. He put this T-shirt out. This white woman, he said, ooh, nah, stop that, cease and desist. And Cam was like, bring it. So he went to court, did it legally, and he has to pay this woman, just pay her legal fees. I don't even, what's the numbers? He got to pay this woman like 60 G's, pay her lawyer fees and pay penalties, and he has to destroy all the merch. And now this woman, through discovery, is going into Dipset website, her merch website, record sales, public appearances, and everywhere that she's able to find through discovery and subpoenas that he used this image on his shit. Cameron used this. He's gonna have to pay double up on that. So for the culture, and it's funny to me, I'm not sympathetic because many of these rappers embrace capitalism. Many of these rappers can't get enough of capitalism. I always say, everybody love capitalism till some capitalist shit happens. Everybody love, and let me tell y'all something. I've been to a couple of industry parties, right? Y'all want to see what she look like? This woman who's held down the culture. This her right here. Here she go. Look, all right here. There she is. The white lady. Well, it's two white ladies. The whiter lady, not the orange lady. Who is that? Melania Trump? Who's she standing there with? Giselle Butcher. Okay. So y'all know her. I'm sure y'all know Miss Butcher, Buchauer, whoever. But the other lady, she looked like she. I'm not gonna say nothing. But yeah, so Cameron, she did, and let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Let me put her back up here if I tell you this. Let me tell y'all something. Dale Jones said, real gangsters don't wear sneakers. Cameron's out there rolling around in Lambos in Chocolate City, blicking back and forth, shooting back and forth. He's so good. He's so Harlem. He's such a hustler. He's such a gangster. Boy. Yeah, she walked in the courtroom talking about boy, oh boy. And you ain't gonna be no retribution. Ain't gonna be no, I say this all the time. I watched that show. I got these hotel, right? I got these hotel rituals. Whenever I go somewhere and travel, nothing I love more than the city. More than the city I'm visiting, more than whatever I'm there, the relative I'm there to see, the convention or the conference I'm there for. Whenever I visit into the city, my favorite thing about visiting a city is basic hotel cable. I've never had cable in my life. Y'all know how hard my upbringing was. First world problem. I never had basic cable in my life. So the only time I've been able to enjoy basic cable, and many times I'll be in a hotel room and if my wife's traveling with me, she's like, you up all night watching these goddamn basic cable, go to bed, we got to get up early. And one of the shows that they always, no matter where I go, be in Uruguay or Italy, no matter where I go, even out the country, one thing that's always playing on marathon is the first 48. And I watch the first 48 and I see these cats, just murder machines, gangster. crime record like Charles Manson, Molly Whopping, Blinking, Thugging, Shucking, Jiving. I mean, it'll be like, you know how they always open with the crime scene on the first 48. And it just be blood on the walls, blood on the ceiling, bullet casings, bazooka shells, grenade fragments. And they were like, okay, this is our victim. We're going to look for the suspect. Woo, woo, woo. And then when they finally catch the guy, bring him in for questioning, he's so fucking passive. And they get me every time. I will look at that show and I'll be like, yo, when this dude ain't gonna be taken alive. This dude just shot up a whole block and been terrorizing the neighborhood. This dude, mad affiliations. They're not gonna take this dude alive. And they show up at his grandma's house and he there with a soggy bowl of cereal and a pair of dingy socks. And the cops don't come with the SWAT team. They don't even have their guns out. They be finishing off their lunch, a sandwich in one hand and a Coca-Cola in the next. And they knock with their elbow and be like, yeah, is Jasper in there? And grandma be like, Jasper? And then Jasper come up, huh? Yeah, we want to bring you down to the station. Here, put these handcuffs on yourself, boy. Here, go in my pocket. I got a set of handcuffs right behind my pistol. Pull out the handcuffs and put them on yourself. Make them tight and uncomfortable. Yes, boss. And they bring him into the room. And the detective will walk in the room, take off his gun, slap it on the table, take out a knife and slap it on the table, take out some tear gas and put it right there in front of him and get comfortable, relaxed, by itself. And sit there and be like, come on now, why'd you do it? And the dudes sit there, and they like to pull their arms and they act like the interrogator, and they sit there, I didn't do it. Yes, you did. Okay, I did. And I'm like, how the fuck you terrorizing black people, murdering black people as soon as that pot-bellied, high cholesterol, low testosterone detective 2.5 days from retirement will grab you by the nape of your neck like a misbehaved puppy and drag you into custody. After you done just sprayed up a whole hood, killed half a dozen people, and you were so passive in custody. And I swear I'm not exaggerating. It blows my mind. They turn into puppy kittens. They turn into puppy kittens, a genetic merger of a puppy and a kitten, a wet puppy and a starving kitten. They so fucking passive. That's the shit with this woman. This woman can sue, and she walk up into hip hop. She's invited. She's been to Rep Carpet, all these hip hop events, because it ain't just Cameron that she shot. If you name a major black artist and you think any of these artists gonna be like, because of how she did Cameron, she's not invited to the award shows, so I don't want her taking my pictures, woo, 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 woo. And now they got these special glasses, paparazzi glasses, that if you take a picture of it, it'll blur out your face because the flash and the glasses are hyper reflective, right? Let's just look this woman up, because you think out of punishment, like this woman owns my likeness? There's Seal. I can't say nothing. There's Kobe and Mambasita sitting the porter. This sister, I ain't gonna say nothing bad about Regina King. She's an icon. Bulletin, Desmond Tutu. I know he's old coon ass Desmond. Coon of coons. I hate Desmond Tutu's motherfucking guts. Of course she shot Diddy. But all I'm saying is she's in all these places I couldn't get into, taking these pictures and owning these. I can't even put Malcolm X on a button. I can't get a Malcolm X poster without paying white folks. They be owning our shit. And you think any black artist is going to say, well, this particular woman and her firm and all of the people she worked with, they can't take no pictures of me no more. Now, let me go out and bootleg a Cameron song. Let me turn, if I put on a Cameron song right now, boy, oh boy, oodles or noodles, and I'm pimping poodles. You know, if I play some Cameron Dipset shit right now, they kick in my door. But they let these white people punk them left and right. The biggest thugs, the biggest gangsters, the biggest mega moguls in our community. The icons y'all really believe gonna business us to freedom, gonna invest and entrepreneur us to the promised land. They be getting punked by just random raggedy white girl. Cool. And I promise you, Cameron ain't gonna harbor no hard feelings. Well, that's just the way. He been beefing with other artists, with black artists for decades. Been beefing with other artists, holding grudges. I promise you, he won't hold a grudge. It's just that mentality when white folks get when you got a problem, you got beef with a white folk. We just can't find that aggression. We just can't find that resentment. We just can't find that core of black rage. Just doesn't well up unless it's another black person standing or sitting across from it. But I digress. BroDiallo show is here. New time, new spirit. I'm taking spirit back from these goddamn religious people. Spirit is the tone. Spirit is the attitude. Spirit is not supernatural. Spirit comes from within, and it's biological. It's psychological. It ain't magical. So anyway, thank y'all for tuning in. Thank y'all for support. And I'm going to try to get through this discussion and open it up because it's something we all need to talk about. Today is Mask Off. The name of tonight's discussion or topic is Mask Off, Capitalism and White Hegemony. Capitalism and white hegemony is going mask off, which means, here's the thing. For all of my life, my entirety of my life, I know it ain't a long time, but it's long for me. I'm amazed, as CeeLo Green said, I'm amazed that I made it this far. That capitalism has worn a mask. White hegemony has worn a mask. Capitalism has worn a mask of freedom and opportunity. White hegemony has worn a mask of democracy and inclusion. And that mask is we still got people alive today who lived up under mask off capitalism, mask off white hegemony. And because capitalism and white hegemony has worn a mask really for over 100 years, relatively old, since the late 1800s, 1900s, capitalism and white hegemony has worn a mask and been very concerned with this public image. And because capitalism and white hegemony had these concerns about its image and public perception, victims of capitalism and white hegemony throughout that time were able to secure certain concessions from the capitalist and the white elites or the white imperialists, whatever, anything but supremacists. The motherfuckers ain't supreme. You know, I will call white people supreme or start using white supremacists if you start calling a malignant cancer cellular supremacy. We know to call anything that is destructive, invasive, pathological, we know to call it, give it negative terms. We do that for everything except for Europeans. Everything except Europeans. You know, if it's a Asian or an African or Native American cannibal, we'd be like, look at that cannibal. White cannibals, we call them, they become sex symbols. Jeffrey Dahmer. Fuck, man. I didn't. Shit, y'all are wild out there. We call them misunderstood. Unique dietary constriction. Y'all wild for that. Y'all wild for that. My wife, and again, she just told me today, she said, stop saying y'all. Listen, I'm Midwestern, born and bred. My wife, she likes to pretend she's Midwestern, but she was born and raised in Chicago. The rest of the Midwest does not claim Chicago because Chicago ain't had to deal with the rednecks. Chicago is an oasis of black urbanism in a sea of rural, white, Midwestern white folks. So it kind of bothers us black people from Kansas and Oklahoma and Indiana and Missouri, us black folks, when Chicagoans try to say it's the Midwest plus Chicago plus one. But anyway, I'm from the Midwest, and if she was truly from the Midwest and not from Chicago, she'd know that when I say y'all, it only applies to the people it applies to. I'm from the Midwest. If me and my siblings was in a room and my little brother and me was acting a fool and my sister was sitting there quietly and my grandmother kicked in the door, was like, I'm gonna beat y'all ass, my sister wouldn't flinch. We know when she said I beat y'all ass, it only applies to the people who ass was potentially going to be beat. So when I say y'all, I don't know, it bothers my wife. And I say it in conversation with her. I'll see something absurd and I'll be like, man, y'all bugging. She, y'all. And been with this woman 23 years. Yep, 23 years in September. Been with this woman 23 years since September, and she still ain't learned me. She still ain't learned me. That when I say y'all, I mean y'all, not y'all, but y'all. Now everybody else understand. I be trying to, and again, she's not just non-Midwestern. She's also, part of the two-parent household, Negro, Cosby Show, bourgeoisie type. So she also don't understand that vernacular. But we ain't here to talk about her. I'm just saying, y'all crazy, y'all wild for that. But anyway, let me just give a little background for mask off. And I know a lot of black people listening to me are like, what do you mean mask off? White people, it's always been racist. It's always, now y'all ain't gonna say that about capitalism. Some of y'all Negroes believe y'all capitalists. I'm telling you, even if you a Negro sitting on 7 figures, even if you black people can't be capital. I don't care, even black billionaires, I don't consider them. Oprah is not a capitalist. P. Diddy is not a capitalist. That one thick-necked Negro that gave away all them scholarships that I don't think, where he said he gonna pay everybody's tuition. I ain't seen a tuition check come through yet. These are not capitalists. They're not capitalists. And I'll explain to you why they're not capitalists in a moment. By definition. They're hyper consumers, mega consumers, elite consumers. Because the only thing that separates a rich black person, the only thing that separates me from Floyd Mayweather is consumption capacity. That's it. Because I probably got hands as nice as his. I just am a non-violent. I'm a non-violent brother. Or else I'd be out there. Bip, bip. And maybe it's a couple other things that separate me. But in terms of economy, the only thing that economically that separates working class or poor black people from the wealthy black people is consumption capacity. That's it. Nothing else. And I'll explain why. So why? And another thing, here's another thing I could tell you. You can't be capital and capitalist at the same time. You cannot be a resource and a resource extractor at the same. You got to claim your set. You got to pick a side. So black people, we capital. We are commodities. We are owned, controlled. So I know you can put a wig, a red wig and a nose on a cow, but that don't make it Ronald McDonald. It's still beef. It's gonna be exploited. So if a cow walking up to McDonald's and like, I'm a cow, but I'm gonna put on a a Ronald McDonald wig and a big red nose, and it's okay. I'm not a cow anymore. They're like, okay, you can parade around in that wig all you want, but when it come time, your ass gonna go to that slaughterhouse and we gonna chop you up. But for the time being, and let me tell you something, because this relates back to the atrocities happening right now in Palestine. You'll notice right now in Palestine, they're targeting journalists, they're targeting engineers, they're targeting doctors, they're targeting entrepreneurs and businessmen. They just had an elite IDF shock troop standing in a prominent store in the market district in one of the districts in the Gaza Strip. And they were standing there and grabbing this Palestinian entrepreneur, grabbing their shit off the counter and tossing it and smashing up their stores. They're targeting entrepreneurs. They're targeting the Palestinian political elite. Palestinian artists, poets. So by their version, Palestinian celebrities. All the people we look to from our community as people who have either power or status within our community, they being picked off one by one in Palestine. I'll do you one better. Just like in the Third Reich, under the Third Reich, the Nazi regime, who were they targeting? A lot of them got out. The first people that had to pack up and get the fuck out of Dodge were the composers, the writers, the scholars. They went to the university and told all the Jewish professors, step off. STEM. Remember just a few years ago, we were talking about STEM was going to save us. There's this thing called Kristallnacht. I think I mispronounced it. Kristallnacht. The night of the broken glass. Right? And the night of the broken glass is when they went into the Jewish merchant district. They went into the Jewish merchant district and smashed all the windows. They smashed all the windows of the business owners, all the Jewish tycoons, the Jewish moguls, the Jewish entrepreneurs, the Jewish bling bling diamond districts. Wipe that shit the fuck out. Yeah, the night of the broken glass. Thank you, I Manifesto. The Kristallnacht. So, everybody that in our community right now, everybody in our community that they are pushing as the black people, the people who have power, the black capitalists, the black elites, in every campaign such as this, in every campaign, the very people we think have the most power in our system, in our community, are targeted and put up no resistance. Wiped from the fucking board with no motherfucking existence. So when I say capitalist, I know that we say black capitalist and black capitalism. It's not really true. There are no black capitalists anywhere in the fucking world. Because what is capitalist? You need two things. You need power. You need power. And you need capital. Capital and power. Power and capital. Those two things. Not just possess them, but wield them. Now, we misunderstand what capital is when you talk about it in the context of capitalism. Capital is the ownership of the means of production. Capitalism is the ownership of the means of production. Ain't no cash money nowhere in that. White folks go places and just invent capital. We could all wake up tomorrow and the United States to say, well, we're going back on the gold standard. and bring in your greenbacks or bring in your most recent account, take it to your local bank or take it to your local currency exchange or take it to your local federal building, and we will give you the silver and gold equivalent of your monies. Or we're going strictly digital currency, and we outlawed nickels and coins. And if you're caught harboring dollars or you're caught harboring nickels and coins, you will be fined and maybe arrested, because this is, and every citizen will be issued a barcode, you know, and this will be all exchange. Y'all, they can, money is whatever the fuck they say it is, because that's power. Power is the ability to define reality and have it act in a desired manner. Show me a black person that has power and capital. Show me one, especially in the United States. Show me one. You might find it, maybe, if you go find some obscure oligarch, some really elite brand of African somewhere in the world, maybe, but in the United States, show me one. Money is what the people in power say the fuck it is. And it do what they say it do when they say it can do it. And it ceases to exist. They write it, they will money into existence and out of existence. I remember the time when nobody had a credit card. I remember there was only two people in my whole, well, three people in my whole family that had credit cards. And my family's huge. I got a big Baptist family. Big numerically and big in size. I got a big Black Baptist Methodist family. And only three of them, out of dozens and dozens of black folks, only three. First of all, had a wealthy aunt and a enterprising uncle, her baby brother. This is my grandmother's sibling. They both had credit cards. And I had another uncle who was a cop. And I saw him walk up the first time I ever saw him. Y'all remember ATMs used to be hulky. And they used to have huge buttons and they crunk big monstrous things. Wasn't no touch screens. I remember the first ATM I ever saw. My Uncle Chris walked up there and put a card in there and pulled out money. I thought he was magical. And now they're like everybody, credit cards, easy credit for everybody. Easy credit for everybody. And then they were like, okay, since everybody get credit cards, we're going to come up with this thing called a platinum card. And then everybody get platinum cards. You know, then everybody and their mama get platinum. They just put platinum on every fucking card. Now there's the black card. The black card. And they just keep fucking making this shit up, and we fall into every motherfucking box. Every motherfucking box. So you have to show me a black person that has power and actual capital that controls the means of production. Having a shit ton of fiat currency, I just explained to you, whether in Palestine, there are some wealthy men in Palestine. There are some wealthy families in Palestine who are on the run. The only thing that wealth will afford you, if you're a member of a displaced, oppressed, colonized people, the only thing that wealth will afford you, if the real people, if the real capitalists and the real people in power decide to move against you, is you get a running head start. Because if the United States decided to move from fascism to full-on Nazism, which is where it could go at any day, any incident, there could be a killing spree. And it's more of the 400, 500 million guns and trillions of bullets in this country. And the white majority says we're going after any population, Asians, Arabs, blacks, people they define as Latinos, Sheiks, anybody can get it. Even if you white, it won't save you. You know, they could go after the Russian, oh, you from Russian. And let me tell you something. If you line up a Russian, a Ukrainian, Yugoslavian, a person from the Balkan, anybody with a slightly Slavic accent, they could go and say, we're going to wipe out the French. These people just murder, mass murder is their forte. That's their culture. And the only thing that the wealthy members of those targeted groups have is a slight head start. They have a slight head start. Even if you are, oh, I'm rich, I got a private jet. Do you have air traffic control, motherfucker? Do you have a flight regulating industry? That's the real power. They fly, they dictate how you fly, what direction, what altitude you can fly, when you can fly. They can even outlaw you from flying to certain countries. You know, power is not having the ability to buy whatever someone's willing to sell you. So I know we throw around that word capital and capitalism quite a bit. But in terms of when you say capitalist, most people are not capitalist in terms of practices. They may embrace, like me, I support socialism. Hell, I support communism. But I'm not practicing communism. I don't live in a communist system. So my sentiments, my desire, my drive, even my agenda, my plan is to bring about socialism. So, but what's funny is the people who are pro-capitalist, but not capitalists themselves, believe they're participating. They're participants. You are a resource. If you're listening to me, I guarantee you, everybody listening to me right now is capital. You can't be capital and fucking capitalist. Your day-to-day life, your day-to-day work, you work for your income, you earn your income, and don't think you get a little rental property or you got a little storefront or a little kiosk. You got some little cards with your name and you got an LLC. They tricking you. You're going to die what you were born into, part of the working class, just like the monarchy. Just like the monarchy, but just like there was some peasant that believed some prince or some nobleman would ride into town on his stallion and take her away and make her a princess. The likelihood of that is as likelihood as if you striking it rich. But it's so many people that believe it. And it would be so much more value utilized and put into uplifting your class and your race than trying to uplift yourself in the economy. But that's another discussion. I'm just telling you, when I'm talking about capitalism and power, which is white hegemony, that's the only source of power that's in the world now. And every other power source, where even if it's African power, Arab power, even Chinese power, has to define itself in relationship, in opposition to or submission to, or how it navigates white power. This is what is called a unipolar world. Capitalism and white hegemony is the world power. I don't like it. I don't accept it. We should not rest until we upend it. But before you can come up with a proper treatment for a disease, you need the full diagnosis of the disease. The problem of the world is capitalism and white hegemony. And there's no other problem you can identify, whether it's a local, relatively minor problem or a global scale problem, that does not tie back to capitalism and white hegemony. And any problem that you think you can address, or any problem you think you have the remedy for, if you do not tie it to opposition to capitalism and white hegemony, your remedy for whatever other problem you can imagine is transient at best. It's a transient response. It is not a true solution. Every person that thinks that life is worth living and wants to perpetuate life, and not only perpetuate life, but know that living things have a certain status and quality of life, needs to be oriented against, in opposition to capitalism and white hegemony. We also have to stop allowing them to fragment this. We have to stop allowing them to fragment it, because we think there are many problems in the world. Global warming, Palestine, Congo, the brewing conflict in the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia and Eritrea, Latin American natives, the Inuit people, the melting poles, the extinction of the bears, the rise of right-wing fascism, chronic disease, human life expectancy shortening, microplastics, dioxin, nuclear and radioactive contamination, widespread anti-intellectualism. Everything, and I know people, Lord bless your heart, I commend every person that's out here working on these particular problems, but not nail one of them does not have a straight line, do not pass go, do not collect $200 that does not go right back to capitalism and white hegemony. And the vast majority of people who are working on these particular problems that are bastard offspring suckling at the teat of capitalism and white hegemony do not tie it back to that. In fact, many of the people fighting to address the issues caused by capitalism and white hegemony believe the solution is rest within better applying the values and principles of capitalism and white hegemony. Now, you don't call it white hegemony, but when you talk about integration, when you take a little colored child, there's these little black children, and they get graduate from high school at 8 years old and get a PhD at 15. And these brilliant black kids every goddamn spring. What is it? It's December, January, February, March, April. Between March and April, I got 4 months before I have to just get off social media because I see all these brilliant black kids with 4.0s and Negroes sitting there bragging, oh, this black child's going to Harvard. These two black twins got the highest SAT scores in history, and these black kids are going to Brown, and this black kid's going to Cal State, and all these black people sent off to be indoctrinated by our enemies and oppressors, and we are celebrating it. That is white hegemony. Black people getting up at award shows and walking the red carpet. The red carpet, when wealthy and powerful people walk the red carpet, that symbolizes them walking on the blood of their defeated enemies. And who is the number one enemy of the elites? The masses, the workers. We're their number one asset and we're their number one threat. But we choose to dwell in asset category by and large. But anyway, let me back it up. I'm just trying to lay the groundwork. I ain't even started talking about the topic yet. I just think we have so much misunderstanding. Again, to quote Bobby E. Wright, black folks, we've been in this country longer than anybody and we understand it the least. And to quote, I'm going to just stop quoting. I didn't quote it, these brothers. I could just say it without saying it. We are the true believers. We are the true believers. When Dr. Clark called black people the true believers, he did not say that as a compliment. He said it as a condemnation. We believe more in their bullshit rhetoric than they do. We bang harder for their lives than they bang for. So, what is mask off? We're in the era of mask off. Why did the mask come on? Now, again, I know this is going to sound weird, especially for many of you conscious black people. Especially if many, bless your heart, conscious black person who all woke black people. If you've been woke for a long time, this might not be understandable to you. But I guess you can't really go there because, I mean, our condition, our status demonstrates that even though there's a lot of us woke, it ain't enough of us to turn this. Now, there was a disruption in the system, right? So white people originally organized themselves in a monarchical system. And monarchy passed rulership and control of the means of production, power and resources, power and capital, was passed down through lineage, right? You're born into the royal families and they gathered up all the resources. And as human technology and human population began to grow, they saw that the monarchical system was inadequate for global conquest. Monarchy worked well for regional conquest, right? So, Europeans did away with the monarchy and came up with a moneyed. Before it was, I never said we couldn't win, bro. Who I believe we could win. I wouldn't be here if I didn't say we couldn't win. But I also said before you can come up with a solution, you need a proper diagnosis. If you don't have stomach or the endurance for critique, you can move on. If you got the answers, farewell. Good day to you, sir. I mean, he listen. He's hearing me, but he's not listening. He's talking about. I never said we couldn't win, but anyway, I digress. So anyway, the mercantile class, the merchants overthrew because there were two sources of power: the clergy or the church, and the monarchy. And so the merchant class was a new class of people that didn't exist before. They came when with industrialization, and it's really interesting history. Really interesting history. And maybe I'll do some review on those books. But long story short, white folks went from mercantile monarchies to capitalist hierarchies and capitalist oligarchies. Just take my word on that, because we live it. That's what we live in today, right? And so it was going, they conquered the world. The sun never set on the British Empire, but the sun never set on the Portuguese, the Spanish, the French. I see you there. The French. The sun never set really on the white global hegemony empire, right? And so there is a threat that emerged, because then in the Western world, white on white violence, white on internal conflict, they came up with this thing called communism. Because despite what we understand, white people did not benefit from capitalism. Now we think, and we say all the time, white people took over the world, white people got all the money, blah, blah, blah. But because white culture, white economics, white tradition, all of their resources always concentrated at the top. Throughout white history, the vast majority of white people were illiterate, cold, starving peasants. You had the clergy, and even in the clergy, most of the monks and the low-level priests weren't balling. White culture always accumulated wealth at the top. Always. Go back to the Greeks and Romans. The vast majority of Roman citizens were brokenness. And this is why it's so stupid for black people to think integrating with white people will give black people more economic security. If we truly fully integrated with white people, we will go from being slaves to being peasants, from being slaves to being serfs, the vast majority of us. So they emerge amongst white people communism. White people, through observation and interacting with the people they conquered all over the world, right? We're basically like, wow, these people share and cooperate. That's all communism is, sharing and cooperation. Saying the people who do the work should receive the spoils of their labor. People should work together, share, and cooperate. Now, Marx, because he's white, is a great philosopher. Now, he went into a lot more detail. I encourage every black person living under the thumb of global white hegemony to read Marx and to have a certain level of appreciation of Marx. I don't know. Well, I know why. Black people, we're subjected to a lot of the same propaganda that white people are. And even when we become so-called conscious, we remain conscious within that bubble of limited propaganda. But anyway, Marx said, hey, society would be better if the people who made shit were able to benefit from their work. If the people who worked at a place should maybe control the place. And the people who don't work maybe shouldn't control everything. And maybe people, instead of competing against each other, they should cooperate and share what they know. So people should be humane instead of predatory. And they were like, Marx is both one of the most brilliant philosophers in European history and one of the most reviled men. He was hated, right? And so some white people took this idea to heart. And these white people, came down, descended from the people who fought against the monarchs. Many European peasants and serfs rose up and fought against the monarchs and were tortured to death and murdered. And they rose up and fought against the established church, the Orthodox Church or the Catholic Church, and started Protestantism. And so white people had these uprisings and they didn't get shit for it. So they said, we got rid of the the Catholic oligarchs, and now the Protestant elite, the Anglican Church. Now the heads of the Protestant Church are acting just like the Catholics did. Now the merchants are acting just like the fucking monarchs. And I'm a slave again. I was a serf on the plot of land of a nobleman, and now I'm a laborer in the factory of a merchant or a capitalist, and shit's still fucked up. So we threw off the yoke of oppression just to get a new industrial yoke of oppression. And that fed into communism, socialism, anarchism. Saying we don't want any hierarchy because we traded one hierarchy for a new. We don't want any hierarchy. So anyway, this started brewing. And they did what they could do to suppress this thought. And they fought communist uprisings and communist revolutions. And then the communists had to align with the capitalists because the natural outcome of capitalism, Nazism, and fascism, and came. And so you had basically the capitalist and the communist, which was the two polar world, right? Two schools of thought, two ways of organizing an economy, right? And so amongst the capitalists, they bifurcated or they fractured. You had, because the capitalists were fighting amongst themselves long before the communists came into existence. And so you had the fascist or the Axis, which was a group of capitalists, the Axis power, which were fascist capitalists, and then you had the so-called free world democracies, which were also capitalists. And so they said, well, in order to stop the fascist capitalists, we're going to join with the communists. And the communists actually had already been fighting the fascists. And when the initial fight between the fascists and the communists started, the capitalists in the West, Great Britain, United States, France, they gave aid to the Nazis. They gave aid to the Nazis. And let me tell you why Hitler's the biggest villain in history. It's not because he killed a lot of people, because there are white tyrants who have a higher body count than Hitler, who did more killing over a longer period of time. The British in India outpaced Hitler. They did in a year what Hitler took a decade to do. But nobody, I could walk up and down the street with a British bulldog, a Union Jack on my shirt. Nobody would flinch if I wore a swastika. But that's neither here nor there. This is a broad topic. I should have got. I'm not. I don't know. I'll try to get to the point. So anyway, after World War II, from the early 1900s, there were communist uprisings, anarchist rebellions, and it wasn't just marching. They used to really get down. The communists, the anarchists, the socialists, the utopianists, as they were often called, they were throwing sticks of dynamite. They were assassinating CEOs or what they call those guys? The barons, railroad barons and textile barons back in the day. And so they were killing these motherfuckers. The labor struggle. The workers weren't just marching. Hell no, we won't work. They weren't just, they wouldn't leave the factory and say, well, we're going to protest these conditions, these working conditions, and low pay and long hours and injury and no compensation. They wouldn't walk out. They do these sit-down strikes. It wouldn't be a union leadership sitting in a boardroom in the same air-conditioned boardroom as the bosses. And well, they didn't have air conditioning back then, but you get my image I'm trying to paint. Back in the day, the strikes weren't the leaders would go and sit down and debate and argue back and forth and then go out and tell the union we're going to strike or we're going to give it 2 more weeks. The motherfuckers would be like, I don't like this shit. Tell the man next to you. I don't like this shit. Tell the man. And they'd sit down. So they wouldn't just walk out. They would shut the whole fucking factory down. And they would come and build barricades around the factory and turn that shit into a fortress. Right? And so it was we don't know this history. Now, whenever you think of union history in America, you think of the mafia, the mob, and the Teamsters. That's by design. That's propaganda. Where you had these hard-working business owners, these hard-working industrialists just trying to run a business and give people good jobs and good lives, and the dirty union that's infiltrated by the mob. That was on purpose. They'll never tell you that the unions were communists. They'll never tell you that the 8-hour workday, workers' compensation, the end of child labor, the capitalists opposed to all that shit. We really got people walking around right now on planet Earth who think that the prosperity that they enjoy, the fact that I can work me a good job, give me a university education, and better my life and break a family curse, y'all really think that is in spite of the capitalists, not because of the capitalists. But anyway, I hate speed running history, but we can go back and get into any detail y'all want. But anyway, long story short, there was an alternative at that time. The labor struggles, and then the people, the Europeans, basically got humanity and say, hey, we can have a humane, non-competitive economy. We can have an economy where the workers own the means of production, where the land is held in common. There's no private land ownership. There are no barons. There are no kings, no rulers, no masters. We can share the resources in common. We can preserve the ecosystem. We cannot be oriented to work. We don't have to work to live. We can work to create. We can work to sustain. We can work to uplift, but we don't have to work to live. Being able to live, having shelter is a human right. Having education is a human right. Having health care. So these ideas that they got from running up on people, natives around the world, they took it back and Eurocized it and said, oh, we invented communism, abracadabra. And they were like, well, we were doing this shit before y'all got here and tipped our shit over. Well, that's primitive communism. That's unconscious, accidental communism. We deliberately and consciously and ideologically and politically and culturally created the philosophy and economics. But anyway, okay, let them have it. Let white folks have it. Give them credit. They've done so much evil. If they stole so much shit, if they try to steal something, let me tell you something. If white folks want to steal the concept of cooperative economics, communalism, if they want to take it and say they made it, fine. As long as they do it, let them have it. So the Europeans, the capitalists, and the white hegemons were like, God damn it, there's a competing system in the world. There's capitalism, there's communism. And the Africans were like, well, for lack of a better word, we're communists. The Europeans who came and conquered us and put an alien system and an alien religion and all this alien practices on us, then another group of white people came and resold us what we had before the white man came. So a lot of Africans became communists. There were several communist guerrilla factions, socialist and communist uprisings in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and in India. Everywhere there were communist parties popping up, which was basically black people putting a European label or terminology on what they had prior to colonization. And so Europeans were like, fuck, when we thought we were getting something brand new, when we were just reestablishing what we had before the white man came there, right? In a nutshell. And so that's when, dating back 100 years, the early 1900s, capitalism and white hegemony started to wear a mask. And that's when they started saying, let's make capitalism synonymous with democracy. Let's make the free market synonymous with individual freedoms or human rights, right? Let's stop talking about the superiority of the white man. Let's stop with this motherfucking, what was that shit they call? Eugenics. Superiority of the white flesh. The shape of our skulls. The narrowness of our nostrils are evidence of high evolutionary attainment. Let's start giving our colonial subjects status within our empire. Let's get some Negro Uncle Tom handkerchief head sellouts and make them lieutenants. Make them admirals. Make them colonial administrators. Make them president of the United States. These race traitors. Let's end segregation. Let's end Jim Crow. Let's abolish the slave trade. And so they started having all these competing ideas. And communism out the gate since its founding was anti-slavery. And so, and just like some of the earliest white people to join the civil rights movement, go back and read the story of the Scottsboro Boys and the major civil rights cases. It was always communist. And even if you weren't a communist, if you were a white person in the 1940s and 30s and saying this racial shit, this racial segregation is unjust, they would call you a communist. Literally communist. Any white person that was not for overt racism, open white supremacy or white hegemony was literally called a communist. Now black people today don't like communists and got black and supporting black capitalists. But the propaganda, they good. I say when Dale Jones said when Europeans lose the war, they go to work to win the peace. So anyway, there was a competing system. And I know everybody starts the communism did not start with the communist revolution. The Bolsheviks and the Menshevik uprising, the toppling of the Russian oligarchs, the Romanov family, the toppling and execution of the Tsar and his whole fucking family. You know, and we hear every day about Anastasia. Nobody ever talks about the thousands of children that Tsar Nicholas starved and murdered and had gunned down and machined and mass graves that the Tsar did. We got to hear about this one little rich white girl. This one little rich white girl who was the blue ivy of Tsarist Russia. Man, to see y'all online defending these rich kids, these crazy ass, oh, don't say nothing about Northwest and don't say nothing about Blue Ivy. And like I said, you stepped over a half a dozen kids living in poverty and wretchedness on your way to work, on your way to get your Starbucks coffee before you got to work, and ain't thought twice about them kids and then go online and talk for Blue Ivy. We need class consciousness and class antagonism. You should have disregard and hatred for rich black folks until you can become one. Hate it till you don't fake it till you make it. Hate it until you make it. And then when you get up there, we'll hate you. Hate it till you make it. Don't fake it till you make it. But I digress. Don't get me started. I'm about to lose. I probably lost some people with that. But yeah, y'all don't play about rich people's kids, man. Fuck them particular kids. Where was I? Okay, so anyway, the capitalists put on a mask. And even with the mask on, I was born during the Cold War. I was born in the midst of the Cold War. I was born in the midst of America spreading democracy around the world, patriotism. I was in the midst of that. And, you know, I was born where we were told the communists are going to come here and take our freedom any day now. The Cubans are harboring communist saboteurs, and their nukes are all pointed at us. And, oh, it's just a nightmare. And they would show us on TV lines and lines of people lined up for bread in Russia. They were like, see, if communism come, and they'd show lines of people in bread and soup lines in communist Russia. And I'd be watching that on TV, and my mother typed me on the shoulder and be like, Diallo, come on, we're running late. And I'm like, where are we going? We're going to get on the government cheese and powdered milk line. And I didn't even draw the connection. I was just a baby boy. I didn't understand, like, goddamn. I got up and the news was on, and they showed Russians standing in the bread line. And I'm like, oh, them Russians, oh, it's evil, the evil empire, the Iron Curtain. And then I'm on my way to stand in line. And the only difference was we were standing in line outside a church to get free cheese. And the Russians were standing in a line outside the motherfucking government building to get bread. Other than that, we was all in the same boat. But we thought we had it better because we was in the country that had God on its side. Anyway, okay. So even though, and this is weird, I talked about this with Skip Kuhn on the Rational Radicals every first and third Wednesday, how shit was bad. I grew up when the capitalists were pretending like their whole system was about working hard, sacrificing free enterprise, equal opportunity. When white hegemony was said, no, we're about respecting the sovereignty, UN agencies helping less fortunate nations to develop the third world and bringing peace and democracy to the world. I grew up under that, and now like this shit is mad fucked up. And so even though the mask on capitalism was fucked up, it was worse. And it's crazy to me that I have to sit here and tell black people, as bad as shit is now for African people, prior to the civil rights movement, things were worse. Things were worse because what we do was, and just go watch, what was that? Y'all go watch that shit for yourself. I'm just gonna see the Rational Radical show on the same channel. Revolution in Retrograde. Go watch just the previous show, Revolution in Retrograde, where I was talking about how we fantasize about Jim Crow. We had big black businesses and we had two-parent households. And like I explained to you, in Palestine, the businesses are being machine gunned and bombed. And Nazi Germany, businesses don't mean a motherfucking thing. If you don't have state power, if you don't control the means of the production, if you don't control the fucking military, if you're not a policymaker, if you don't own the mines, the raw natural resources, if you are not defining reality, the shops will get burned. I say all the time, y'all be forgetting so soon, but remember the church burnings? Every 5 to 10 years, there'll be a rash of church burnings. In my lifetime, there's been like 3 campaigns of church burnings in the United States. And people are like, they burning our churches, they racist. Why they burning our churches? And I say they burning our churches because we ain't got shit else. Can't burn black factories, can't burn black white warehouses. So if I'm a racist sitting somewhere in rural America and I'm get a hankering for a hunk of racism, and I'm drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon, and I done already, gave my cousin her Valentine's Day flower and other things, and did my, and then I just want to go out and get my muster up. So what am I going to do? And I want to go do some harm to black. All they got. They're not going to burn the NFL down. I mean, shit. But I digress. Let me not make any suggestions. So anyway, there was this limiting factor. So they came to, we don't understand how closely tied civil rights. Black people been marching since before Garvey. Black people been protesting. Black people been militant, shooting rifles and fighting with these. The late great Professor William Mackey had an essay called "Crazy Niggas," and in that essay, and he called it "Crazy Niggas" because the term "crazy nigga" didn't come from black people; it came from white people. And basically, or if you read, I think, is it Richard Wright? Which one of his books? Native Son. Listen, it's been so I need to reread these books. I've read all these books when I was a kid, and I'm just trying to go off of a memory of a book I read when I was 16 years old. I got kids older than I was when I read that book, so I need to revisit. But anyway, if you read in that book, he talked about the black people, basically. And when Professor Mackey was raised up in, he was Gullah Geechee in Jim Crow South, and he said that black people who didn't conform to the requirements of Jim Crow America. So you had it wasn't just during the sit-ins. It wasn't, and we know that long before Rosa Parks, we had working class black girls sitting on the front of the bus, but we also had black youth who would go sit at the counter, and it wasn't no NAACP. There was no press conference. There was no observers. There were no white allies. It would just be some brother that's like, God damn it, I'm going to get me an egg sandwich, and this cracker's going to serve it to me. With no fanfare. And those were called the crazy niggas. And he did a whole essay on black people. Some black man had a brogue iron sharecropper. He took his shoes, his one good pair of Sunday shoes, his one good pair of nice shoes in to have it serviced at a cobbler. And the cobbler, he came back and says, yes, sir, I'm here to get my shoes. And the cobbler said, what shoes, nigga? And he's like, okay, I'm going to come back tomorrow. You best have my shoes on this counter, fully repaired. So he came back the next day, and the white man said, I told you, nigga, don't come in here no more. So he went and got his rifle and lit that crack, shot that dude, and then went into the woods, the backwoods. And they had a whole search party. And then 2 days later, he walked down Main Street, pop, 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 and then went up to the woods again. Waited another week, came back, pop, 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 pop. And so he did essays on black people like this. And Richard Wright, kind of in his introduction, talked about these figures whom we'll never know, never get on a shirt, never get on a placard, never get a black holiday, never get some dignified, thick neck Uncle Tom get up on a podium and talk in recognition, never have an award named after them. So the Europeans were like, listen, I'm ready to die for mine. We hear these rappers talk about how they ready to die for what they die for theirs. The civil rights movement, they understood, hey, if we got the Africans people here locked in and isolated, we can go back and forth. And what we always fail to grasp and accept is that the white elites don't care about the white masses. They don't care about exposing their white. We think all white people stick together. I have a show from years ago, like 5-6 years ago, called The Myth of White Unity. White people are not unified. Their power is not rooted in their unity. They are not a unified people. They do not look out for each other. All you Uncle Tom self-hating Negro, black people, the only people. I guarantee anything you think is bad about black people, especially in the context of violence, in the context of backstabbing and taking advantage of each other, I guarantee you that Europeans have engaged in it longer and more intensely. You ain't seen people murdering their own kind. They got nukes. Right now, the U.S., every time there's a leak, every time there's a whistleblower, and they talk about nuclear armaments and targeting of nuclear targets. They talk about surveillance. Europe and America and Britain. I say this and I'm going to keep saying it. You think the N-word is so bad? There are more white-on-white slurs. I just tell you, go make a white friend. I don't care what nationality or what cultural or ethnicity that white person is. You go make an Irish friend, a Polish friend, a Scandinavian friend, a British, Portuguese, Spanish friend. And when he gets comfortable, give him a little something to drink and get him and ask him. Ask a Spaniard about the Portuguese or ask a Spaniard about a Catalonian. Ask your British friend about a Scotsman. Ask your British friend about what he thinks of the Irish. Ask any non-Polish white person what they think about the Polish. Ask the Polish what they think about the Roma gypsies. They got more hatred and slurs for their other white people than they have for us. And we here thinking they if we just stuck together, things wouldn't. If we all didn't do black on black crime. We do black on black crimes with the guns they manufacture, but they do white on white crime with mustard gas. Yugoslavia, the home, even white people, the home of white civilization is Greece, Greeks. You can't go to any major developed white power without seeing remnants of Greek architecture and Greek statues. They venerate the Greeks. That is the founding of white civilization, the Greeks. And they allowed the Greek economy to go belly up. And all the other white countries circle Greece like a vulture. Y'all, this ain't that long ago. Look how they do their motherland. They own people. And we want equality because we think they'll treat us better if they see us as them and them as us. How many more world wars do Europeans have to fight amongst Europeans than we find out simply getting equal with these people and integrating with these people will grant us no safety and security? But anyway, mask off. We start to fantasize about the 50s and the 40s and the 60s because we had a lot of businesses and we had a lot of two-parent households and forget everything else. Everything else. Yes, I'll give you a black business and I'll give you a two-parent household, but I'm going to increase your chance of being attacked by any random white person, mutilated, hung from a tree, and have your corpse burnt and have them take postcards. But you can have two-parent business. In those two-parent households, A lot of those spouses had to watch their other significant other. And if you go to the police station, that black woman that went to the police station and said they lynched my husband. I got children at home and I'm 8 months pregnant. And they lynched my husband. I got no income. I got no resources. Can I at least have some justice? And they was like, nigga, get out this police station. And she went home to make something for her kids. And the word got around that this wench had the nerve to go to the police because we lynched her husband. So they brought her out and lynched her, cut her, and while they were torturing her, she went into emergency labor. And the baby came out. The placenta was still in her. And they stomped the baby. And they cut it up. And they put the bodies and the genitals of our people in formaldehyde. And passed it around. And then made postcards. And you know how difficult it was to get a photo back then? It ain't like that. Everybody didn't have a photo in there. They had to come up with this tripod and gunpowder and set up this big thing and put this hood up. And everybody had to stand very still because it was a long exposure time. So a photograph in the 30s and the 40s, it took a lot more planning and effort. They had to tell the photographer, listen, we're going to go grab us a random nigga. We need you to come set up hours ahead of time. And they put that shit on postcards and mail it across the U.S. and overseas. And now we got black people in 2023 that reminisce about them good old days. That's disrespectful to our ancestors. It's disrespect to our ancestors for us to sit here and talk about, we had two-parent households in the 30s. We had our own businesses and hotels. You don't give a fuck about our humanity. You just care about fucking random stats that white people made up. I swear y'all would sell us out and be happy to see your brothers and sisters lynched if it means you could have your own hotel. Fuck them hotels and them black businesses. Fuck Black Wall Street. Fuck Black Wall Street. It's a myth anyway. Give me my human dignity. Like Paul Mooney said, I'm going to stay. I ain't going to the past. I'm going to stay right here where I can tell you to kiss my black ass. And they fought and died and suffered. They didn't die for us to vote. They didn't die for us to drink out of water fountain. They didn't die and fight and march and suffer indignities to sit on the front of the bus. They died and fought those indignities to stop giving white people the ability to randomly dehumanize and attack and murder us without consequences. They fought to give us access to the ability to address our grievances. And we sitting here tripping off of the fucking businesses. We sitting here tripping off of the business, the goddamn marriage licenses. Now, and you all goddamn know you got a cousin or your grandparents or some elder in your house that was married for 86 years. And for 45 of them 86 years, they didn't live together. One lived up in Mississippi and the other one came up north. They couldn't stand each other. My grandmother was married for over 50 years and didn't live with that old fool for more than a decade before she moved out with all her 5 kids and said, listen, I can't deal with you. And they never bothered to get divorced. That's another positive marriage statistics. Fuck the marriage statistics. Look at the actual structure of the families. Look at the actual internal hierarchies. What am I talking about? I'm just sick of arguing with black folks over shit we should already have worked out in 2023. But if we got to talk about it, we can talk about it. What was I saying? Now the mask is coming off. The communism in 1991, George Bush, who was president at the time, was it 91? Wait, I'm tripping. Y'all like to stickler me. Pause. 41. When was he? The blood clot. Okay. Yeah, I think it was 91. It was definitely 91. 91, the Russian wall came down. The wall came down, divided Germany. The capital of Germany was once again unified. Communism was defeated. And George Bush gave this speech called 1,000 Points of Light. And they were blaming everything that bad was happening on communism. So whenever they assassinated a black leader, whenever they infiltrated, whenever they denied our human rights, whenever they went into Cambodia, they went into Panama, they went into and invaded Cuba several times, and when they went into Haiti, and when they went into and they sent saboteurs and economic hitmen into Jamaica, and they invaded Grenada, and they invaded. They assassinated the first independent president of Ghana when they went in and set up people and paid off Jomo Kenyatta to sell out the whole continent, and they set up Mobutu and took down Lumumba, and we all know Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia, and it goes on in the Philippines and setting up a brutal dictator in the Philippines. I could just go on and on and on. They told us they had to do it because of the threat of communism. So they would come and say, we want you to have democracy. We want you to have prosperity. We're going to give you civil rights. We're the good fucking guys. We're the free world, and they're the evil empire behind the Iron Curtain. We have to stop the spread of communism. And many of us fell for it. Not all of us. Some of us said, both of y'all crackers. Fuck y'all both. Some of us said, well, them crackers is giving out Kalashnikovs like it's candy. Them crackers are sending troops. Them crackers are arming guerrillas in Latin America, Central America. Them crackers is giving weapons to the right side. So I ain't gonna say F both the crackers. I'm gonna play one cracker off the next. But in that world, in that time, for almost a century, capitalism and white hegemony, the West wore a mask of democracy, free enterprise, and civility, and even they tried to play off, we were wrong for racism, we're going to give you civil rights, we're going to have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. They were playing all this shit, right? And so in 91, communism was defeated. Now, in 1991, this is how racist these motherfuckers were. The most populist country, the fastest country, the country that represented the majority of people, the largest country in the history of human existence, was still claiming communism. The People's Communist Republic of China. But because they're the white folks, the white boys, the Russians said, we ain't communists no more, than communists is over. Because who cares what them yellow people do? Who cares that half the sub-Saharan Africa was still claiming socialism? Who cares? All we got to do is get the big dog to drop it, and the rest of y'all don't matter. Y'all don't count. And they said that they defeated communism when China was still communist. That's how racist these motherfuckers are. But anyway, George Bush came out with this 1,000 points of light because they said, wow, now we've been justifying all this evil and wickedness in the name of stopping communism, stopping the spread of communism. We went to North Korea and chopped the motherfucker in half and created a divided peninsula, a nuclear armed peninsula. And we built all these giant military bases all over the world. Okinawa, right? We propped up places like Japan and Israel to be a bulwark as shining examples of democracy and communism. It's a fucking lie. South Korea was propped up to say, okay, we're not going to do South Korea like we're going to do the rest of it because we need South Korea to be a beacon. So let's put a bunch of neon lights and skyscrapers and give them some car companies, even though the vast majority of Koreans still live in poverty. But hey, people are not going to look past the lights. They're not going to look down the alleyway. They're going to look up at the neon. Man, a really good hustle. So anyway, I'm not saying in that time that the U.S. wasn't racist. I'm not saying that time U.S. was not imperialist. I'm saying at that time there was different rhetoric, and they had to make certain concessions to sustain the lie. And we mistake these concessions they made with being a change of heart. White folks finally figured out after 1,400 years of how to do right by black folks. So anyway, communism, the Iron Curtain fell. Russia went from being a nuclear enemy to a capitalist ally. And George Bush, the first George Bush, George H.W. Bush, gave this speech called 1,000 Points of Light. And this 1,000 Points of Light was him laying out the post-communist world. He said, now that the threat of communism has surpassed, he said there will be this thing called a peace dividend. A peace dividend was saying all the money that went to espionage, economic hitmen, coup d'etats, aircraft carriers, nuclear bombs, weaponization of space, all the money that went to fighting communism will now be spent on schools and hospitals and tuition and healthcare and community gardens and beanie babies. We about to put all this energy and resources into a world that will be of peace, because we told you the cause of all this conflict was communism. The cause of all this oppression and repression was communism. The great evil of the world that was overtaking the world, the dark cloud that was descending on humanity, was communism. And now that communism is gone, everybody can be an entrepreneur. Everybody can be rich. Everybody can have a private jet. All of us can ball till we fall. That was the rhetoric. And people believe that shit. People believe the post-communist, and there was this rhetoric about the end of history. There is no more ideology. All these weird-ass ideologies, all these weird-ass groups, and all this shit, everybody's going to be white Christian capitalist. Even if you're not, you'll live as though you are. So even if you're a black Muslim, whatever, we're all going to have an opportunity to live in the free market. And people like Milton Friedman and other scumbag motherfuckers wrote books and went all over the world telling people about the prosperity. Everybody's going to live like an American, have a big ass gaudy house, a 5,000-foot paper mache McMansion with a 2-acre backyard and a riding lawnmower and a big ass Hummer SUV in the front yard and big screen TVs on every wall. Don't even have windows. If you want some sunlight, go to the Sun channel and the Tree channel. Don't even have windows. And it's an obscene life. Every time I'm around affluent white people, I'm like, who the fuck is striving for this? Fuck. My community is gentrifying now, and it's not getting better. So, after communism fell, they gave this promise. And then they went to sit down and work and says, the old boogeyman came. We got all these promises fulfilled, but now we have to stop. We can fuck this anti-communist because we decolonized. And the U.S. was actually a proponent of decolonization. The U.S. went to the British, the U.S. went to the French and said, we're not going to back you in your colonial holdings unless it's in Cambodia. It's a little complex, I understand. But generally, the tone of the United States is every nation should be free to determine its own destiny. And every nation should be able to enter into the free market and chart its own destiny. And be every citizen of every foreign nation should be allowed to engage in rugged individualism. I mean, they told some big fucking stories. And then they were like, how do we keep this hustle going? Because they told us after 1991, the world would be more prosperous and peaceful. And the world has gotten less peaceful and less prosperous. The world has inched closer to nuclear holocaust. The world's ecosystems are more destroyed. There are more ongoing conflicts. There are several active genocides that are being funded and supported. Native Americans, remember Bolsonaro intensified the campaign. Native Americans in South America. The native South Americans and Central Americans are still being genocided by conquistadors. And they didn't trick us to think all them people down there are the same people. They all brown. You got natives, you got Europeans, you got Africans, you got Asians, all in Central and Latin America, and we call them all brown. We call them all Hispanic and all Latino when there's race war, ongoing racial conflict. Countries that remember, where did the Nazis run to? After World War II, the boys of Brazil, where did the Nazis run to? They all ran to Latin America because Latin America was receptive to, because they were doing genocide before Hitler was born. OG genociders. And they didn't trick us into thinking it's all brown folks. You cross that border, you become brown. You become oppressed. You become an ally of black folks. Man, we ain't free, we cheat. So now the United States, Israel, and Western Europe and their agencies from NATO to the World Bank are like, we no longer have to pretend. We were pretending, but we no longer have to pretend like we give a fuck about democracy, human rights. We don't have to pretend like we give a fuck about human rights. We don't have to pretend we give a fuck about sovereignty. We don't have to pretend like capitalism is about sacrifice and hard work, about capitalism is about free enterprise. When the richest man in the world on a daily routine getting welfare checks cut, the mask is off. But because everybody now, even though the mask came off in 1991, and the new American century, global hegemony, project for a new American century is in full swing, we still are feeding off of the myths. We got black people promoting earn your leisure. P. Diddy before he got exposed as a predator. We have all these prominent Ice Cube, contract with Black America. We got all these entrepreneurial blacks. We got black people still operating under as though the mask is still on, as though there is a humane and secure place for black people within the systems and institutions of capitalism and global white hegemony, as if there is a place, if we work hard enough, if we're inventive enough, if we're enterprising enough, if we accumulate enough fiat currency, there will be a dignified place. We can buy our way. And your money is a ransom to avoid the worst ravages. But they were like, yeah, Mayweather, get your jet. Yeah, Oprah, buy your multitude of mansions. But guess what? The ecosystem is collapsing. Your cells, your bloodstream is full of cuts. We thought they just wanted money. We thought they just wanted power. We thought they just wanted to flex. We thought they just they want to kill everything. They want to destroy the life-sustaining capacity of the earth. And whether you are on a yacht or you are in the projects sitting in a puddle next to a hydrant, the water will be contaminated. The air will be contaminated. And these motherfucking white elites, as opposed to ending the omnicidal destruction of the Earth's ecosystem in pursuit of short-term growth and profits, they are building bunkers under mountains. They are building escape pods. This is a pathological system. This culture that we are under has a death urge, and no one is exempt. Securing equality with white people will not save us. As the ADOS movement, their theme is we want to be made white. We want the system to see us as white. We want to take our U.S. citizenship as black people and be understood to be in full and good standing with this system. It doesn't matter. There's no place for the majority of white people. Go to rural white America. Go to Indiana. If you're in Chicago right now, you can take a 20-minute drive, pay that little $6 toll, and look how the white majority is living. There is no peace and no sanctuary for the goddamn groundhogs. Even the resilient little rodents are not thriving and surviving under this system. Therefore, there is a good thing that the mask is coming off. But we're still haven't seen the mask come off. As they take the fucking mask off, we got many black leaders putting the mask on. Even though they're like, yeah, you know, that was a lie when we talked about capitalism and democracy, when we were talking about human rights. Oh, we was bullshit. Israel is the first, and they love Israel because Israel is one of the countries that's doing openly, make them long for the good old days. What's happening and it's not Israel. That's why people you can't say Israel versus Palestine. Israel is Palestine. That's like saying United States is going to war against Native America. Native America is the United States. That's the fucking Palestine. Ain't no Israel's at war with Palestine. No. What's happening there is akin to the United States military going to war with Harlem. The United States going to war with Harlem because the members of Dipset commit an act of rebellion, an act of violence against the state, and they go bomb Harlem and pretend like Harlem. They're going to war with the Harlemites. Israel is Palestine. And the Europeans look at that, it's like, wow, good old days. Because there was a time where Palestine was the entire continent of Africa, except for Liberia and Ethiopia. There was a time where every fucking country, Mauritania, Sudan, Egypt, Central African Republic, even Madagascar, a little island off the coast, Tanzania, Nigeria, Senegal, the Gambia, every single country in Africa, excluding Liberia and Ethiopia, even though Ethiopia, that's a whole nother discussion. Let's pretend that's a myth we like to tell ourselves. Ethiopia's never been was going through what Palestine is going through now. There was a time every First Nation, Lakota, Iroquois, Cherokee, the Sioux were going through that. Aztecs, Mayans, Incas, the Inuits, Vietnam, again, North Korea. There's a more recent one. There was a time where they were bloodletting and bombing, indiscriminate bombing. It's like all of the European nations are looking at Israel as the one kid that gets to go outside and play with toys, while all the other kids have to sit in the house and sit at the desk and do their homework. They have to prepare. And they say, well, you can go out and play later. And Israel's the only kid outside playing with his toys. And all the other little white nations are kids looking out the window wishing they could go play. We cannot integrate into this. We have to subvert it. We have to dismantle it. Europeans are unfit to rule. They're unfit to have those nuclear bombs. And no matter what it takes and how long it takes, if we don't do this, then it is extinction. It's literally revolt or die, liberate or liquidate. And what's most disturbing to this, as the Europeans take the mask off, you still got black people talking about capitalism is a solution to any motherfucking thing. Equality and integration into the systems and institutions of the West. Organizing and orienting African countries to be more like the West. Development. We have to, it is better to fail at doing the right thing than to succeed at doing the wrong thing. It is better if we organize for liberation, anti-capitalist and anti-white hegemony, anti-imperialist organization. It is better to organize and live our lives fighting for that goal and fail at it than to try to be secure the bag and succeed. It is better to fail at trying to do the right thing than to succeed at the wrong thing. And I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining in. I've had some issues. I only have so much data. I'm having data issues and issues with the software. And if I can get more contributions and more support, I can expand the channel and get the at least the second, because I'm on the tier 1 for the StreamYard thing. I can get more saving. That way I can put out more audio. I can get my shit up on the streaming services, Spotify, get the audio. But I can't do that. Again, I am listener supported. And if you watch other shit on YouTube, you notice it ain't little commercials popping up and all that shit. I don't try to hit people up for the super chats, but I appreciate everybody making a contribution to help sustain the show. And it ain't even just the material sustaining it. It motivates and inspires me. So thank you to everybody that makes a contribution. In whatever way you can. If you don't have the material resources, that ain't something I relate and I resonate with that. You can like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, share with your enemies, allies, lovers, and haters, and share it around and just help me in the algorithm and with the reach. All of that helps, and I genuinely appreciate it. Shout out to my patrons, most of all, long suffering, true. I work for y'all. So, anytime y'all want to send me a performance review, I will take notice. Anyway, and if you have topics or if you have guests that you want to suggest, people you want me to holler at, text you want me to review, go on and drop that in the comments too. I read all the comments and appreciate them, even the hateration comments. And with that, I wish y'all a good night, and I will be see y'all Monday with the Rational Radicals. Peace. Let me come back. James, weren't we supposed to get a coffee? You done stood me up. Pause. But you left me hanging. Pause. I thought we were supposed to go get some oat milk lattes. I'm just calling James out publicly because he said we were going to grab some coffee or something and left me hanging. So give me a holler. Let me know when you're available. Peace.